Welcome to AromaticChat, the podcast that introduces you to registered clinical and certified aromatherapists around the world. Every other week, my Mima sits down with a different aromatherapist to learn about their aromatic journey and how they use their plants that God has given us in their lives and their businesses. Aromatic Chat is produced by Lemon Balm Coaching, and your host is my Mima, Melissa. She is a master transformational coach and a registered aromatherapist.
Hey friends, welcome to podcast episode number 98, Aromatic Chat with Tresa Staeven. Tresa says it all started with an insect repellent. Little did she know, great literary device right there, little did she know that her quest would lead her right into the heart of the aromatherapy world. After leaving a 20-year corporate job, she now shares her passion for workplace wellness in the Montreal area. She's dedicated to the practice of the art and science of aromatherapy, and there is so much more she has to share, so let's get started.
Tresa, I'm really glad that you said yes to coming onto the podcast. I've known you for a while now through the Alliance of International Aromatherapists. I've always enjoyed seeing you in meetings because you've got great insights, but you're also just a joy to have there. So thank you so much for saying yes.
Oh, thank you, Melissa, for having me. I admit there's been a mode of like jealousy over the years once I first found your podcast, because I'm like, wow, she has all these great people. If only. So it's just an honor to be here today. And I'm always inspired by all the words that you have to say, whether it's in a meeting that we're in together or things that I pick up from other talks you've given or interviews you've done. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I would just love to hear your aromatic journey. I know that you live up in Canada, but you're not from there. But I did take a look at your website and you've got everything. All of your labels are in French and English. I mean, so you're like doing something really cool. And I just really want to hear all about it.
My aromatic journey, I would say, is completely by accident and happenstance. It all started about 8 years ago when I was looking for an alternative for insect repellent. So as you said, I live in Canada now, but I'm originally from Michigan. So in Michigan, very hot, humid summers, mosquitoes, they're the family members you don't really like, but they're part of the family and you learn to live with them. Being in Montreal, while the weather is very similar, there are very few mosquitoes. Like you'll find them in like a park, or maybe if somebody has a microclimate in their backyard, of course, over by like the rivers and stuff, sure. But you can go out for a walk at night and never see a mosquito. I've been here 10 years now, 10 plus years, and I'm still like, we've been out here for an hour and there was not a single mosquito. Like, this is not normal. But we were going on vacation and we were going to be encountering areas with lots of mosquitoes. And I don't necessarily care for the commercial products that are available. So I just kept doing some Google searches over a few months and I always kept landing on essential oils. And I had a very limited view of what essential oils were and was just like, no. That's not gonna, no. And so finally it just got to the point where I'm like, fine, what's the worst thing? It's not gonna work. It's not a huge investment to start off with, so I'll try it. Ooh, we were completely blown over. Made an insect repellent, not according to standards, because of course I was just reading something online. Mm-hmm. But we first went hiking along Lake Michigan in some wooded hiking trails that are there, and never once encountered a mosquito. And I later realized that afternoon that we didn't even like see a mosquito, but we didn't even see anything flying, like nothing. And there's always insects out in the daytime. Kind of stuck that little tidbit in the back of my head. And then the big test, we were outside of Chicago looking at an architectural site, and the site sat in the woods along a river. You looked out at the river and it was just mosquito clouds everywhere. Our tour group would stop and there was about 15 people in the group, and they were all doing the mosquito dance and passing the can of insect
Mhm.
repellent around. And my husband and I were just standing there like, we see all the mosquitoes attacking everybody, but nothing is coming near us. And it was just like, it was surreal. Like we were in the middle of a Dali painting. Like that's just how surreal it was. And so when we got back, I was like, I gotta look more into this because this is just like too good to be true type of thing. And then I discovered there's a whole science side to it. And that just like made me geeky because one of my degrees is in chemistry. So it was just like, oh, this is cool. And then I just started playing. I had plantar fasciitis one summer after running, and it had bothered me for months. I put a blend together, and within a month, I wasn't having any pain anymore. And 5 years later, I still don't have any pain. My husband gets really bad spasms when he's tired. So headaches, sinus infections, like all these little things. And I'm like, this is working. Okay. And then just got to the point where I'm like, there's a lot to this. There's a lot of information online, but there's some things that just don't sit right with me, but I don't know why. And that's when I enrolled in a certification program. I had no intention or ambition that I would become an aromatherapist for life. Like I just wanted
Mhm.
to like know the best way to do this or that, or when I had a gut reaction to know why that might be the case. But the more I got into it, the more like I'd come home after class and I'm like, okay, when we retire, I want to do this. Or maybe on the weekends, I can do this. Eventually, I left my corporate job and opened my own business. And now I work full time being an aromatherapist.
That's amazing. And I looked at your website and you offer massage as well, but I didn't see you listed as a massage therapist.
No, I am not a massage therapist. I contract with some massage therapists and they come in and provide
I
that.
just, yeah, I was looking at your website and I was like, what an incredible business model. Because here you are as the aromatherapist at the apex, and then you've got these massage therapists basically working for you
Mhm.
and bringing people in. And I was just like, that's a beautiful business model. And I haven't encountered that with any of the other aromatherapists that I've spoken with. So
Yeah. And
applause, applause.
thank you. I mean, I am, so it's not on the website yet. That's one of the changes that's forthcoming this year. But in the last year, I have gotten certified in reflexology. So I do offer that and M technique. As of tomorrow, I will be a certified M technique instructor. So there is nobody in Canada that,
Wow.
so
Wow. I've only had one other guest talk about the M technique, and that was Carol Scheidel when she took
yep.
over the Jane Buckle School. Just briefly describe the M technique for people who might not have heard that episode.
Yeah, so the M technique was developed by Jane Buckle, who we know has spent her career obviously as an aromatherapist, but more importantly as a nurse, and a lot of that time in palliative care and hospice settings. The long and short of it was that in caring for those individuals, realizing that they weren't receiving like meaningful touch. They wouldn't have as many visitors as what they may have if they're in the hospital. Yes, they would get touched when doctors and nurses and aides would come in to draw blood, take their blood pressure, turn them and stuff, but nothing that really exhibited like value, dignity, love. Jane Buckle's also a certified massage therapist, so developed this whole technique that could be done for those that are more frail and elderly, and you experience that fullness even if you're only doing hands and feet.
Incredible. So, as a practicing aromatherapist, like what do people come in? Do you have a brick and mortar? I'm assuming a brick and mortar location. When people walk through your door, what are they coming to you for?
So I would say the majority of my clients, I feel like, are always hitting on like the top 5 areas: stress management, sleep, fatigue, headaches, anxiety. With that said, I think obviously as we dig into their health profile, their specific areas of interest, that broadens into more of the physical ailments that they might be struggling with or dealing with that likely are very much related to what they came in for. We put together a plan for what they want to focus on and how they want to tackle things going forward.
Very cool. So if somebody, can somebody just walk in off the street, or do they need to have an appointment to meet with you?
They need to have an appointment to meet with me, but can they come in off the street? Yes. Eventually, my plan is to have a receptionist who can actually work the desk and do things more readily for us collectively. I do have a small retail front as well, so a lot of people coming in are just coming in off the street to purchase essential oils or other accessories.
Like, how did you come up with the idea, to have the massage therapist working for the aromatherapist? I mean, that's backwards from how anybody else does it.
So I think it was one of those things where partly some things just aligned. I love massage therapy. I love getting a massage. And it was just one of those things where, like, I know I don't have the gift or skill set for that. Knew I didn't want to become a massage therapist, but I also knew how much aromatherapy and massage therapy complement one another. And so I just always, in the back of my mind, had it that the two would be going together. And so early on, when I was having my early dreams of one day, I was always having these conversations with my massage therapist at the time. And she was like, oh, that'd be cool. And what if we did this? Like, it always became a we conversation. So
Very cool.
it was like, okay, we're going to do this together, in my mind. So when it all came about, it was all great. The bad thing was that it was really right at the forefront of COVID. But in the meantime, that business model was already built. And so it was just what I kept operating under. It's just there's no perfect time to ever do so many things. You just have to jump in and do it. And so it's what we've gone for. And I think it was also my business model too, with contracting with the therapists out of the gate was different in that as it came to commissions, because I know what it takes to be a good massage therapist. Yes, the big spas and other clinics, yeah, there's a lot of operating expenses that they have, but they also keep a large chunk back for themselves. And that's not how, I feel like that's more where my Googleness or my gravity payments type mentality comes in, that no, I'm going to turn this on its heels.
Wow. So earlier you said you left your corporate job to pursue this aromatherapy thing. Is corporate wellness something that's still really important to you? Because I know that when we come into this aromatherapy thing, most of us come in as adults. It's not like we grew up thinking, I'm going to be an aromatherapist someday. So we bring with us the tools and skills and stuff that we had into the aromatherapy. So how does your corporate background affect you now?
Probably 1,000-fold. I worked for software development companies as a product manager. Today's day and age, a product manager is kind of the mortar within the organization, because yes, we have to understand what the market research is to know how we need to enhance and develop our different products. We work with the engineers to actually know what they have to do in design and go forth with. We're begging executives for money. When we're ready to launch, we're working with the marketing team, the sales team, client services, and giving them all the things that they need to move it all forward. So day to day, it's all the same. I have to do the same stuff for my business. So I feel like I haven't left that part behind. I still have to think in that mindset. I think the only thing that really has changed is I now have to do accounting work, which I don't hate it, but it's not my passion either. On the flip side, I think also through my own personal journey of what caused me to leave my corporate job, but then just seeing what existed throughout a lot of corporations when it came to wellness, there was always a gap. My number one niche is being able to work with corporate wellness and really being able to offer employees things that they need to continue on their own wellness journey, and being able to do so, because I feel like the response from a lot of corporations is that, well, we have insurance benefits, we have gym membership subsidies, which those things are great and they're needed, but they don't cover everything. Your health
Right.
benefits cover you after something has happened. Why not try to prevent that something from happening? We know most people are overworked, they're burnt out, and they still have to come home to their family life, which requires energy and time as well. Being able just, again, to give them things that are just more at their fingertips and easy to use, and to be able to pick what do they need.
Yeah, awesome. Well, you said that accounting is not your passion. So what are some of your other passions outside of aromatherapy?
But just being outdoors, going for just long walks, whether, I mean, just even around the neighborhood, it doesn't have to be anywhere in particular. I love to read, but I don't do that a lot right now. When I got sick with my PTSD, like reading was just something I couldn't do. And since then, like wanting to pick books up again and read, but I also find like I'm still growing my ability to like just focus and concentrate and really consume the information. Like I'm still building out how much time I can do that in a given day. And I'm also in school right now. So that just
That's a
adds up.
lot.
Sure.
Yeah, that's a lot. You brought it up. So PTSD is one of those things that's really close to my heart. I'm married to a combat veteran. My son is a combat veteran. Would you be willing to talk a little bit about your mental health journey? Because as a aromatherapist, that's one of the things that we really, really help people with is their mental health.
So certainly, like I hold nothing back anymore. So my PTSD actually is the result of a toxic work environment. So, which I never even knew existed. Like, yes, PTSD for those that are in the military, PTSD for those that have had a very traumatic assault or other type of event in their life. But I never knew that it could exist because of a toxic work environment. And this was something that I came to realize just how fragile our mind truly is. So, the work environment that was toxic, I knew it wasn't a good place. And I started having conversations with my husband like, I want to look for a new job because these are the things going on. Like, I don't want to be there long term and like be exposed to things in a way where there's going to be damage that's done. So I moved out of that role, found another job right away that was amazing, and thought I was good. What I hadn't realized is that the damage was already done. And it only came about when I got triggered by a particular situation about a year after I had left. And it was very hard. I was super, super emotional. Like that was like the initial part of it all. Like I would literally come home sobbing every day after work. And I'm not unemotional, but I'm not one that cries all the time. So it was just was something new, and I couldn't explain fully everything that was going on. And then the anxiety side of things really kicked in. I became hyper vigilant. And in the role I already have, you're already doing a lot of risk mitigation and having like backup plans in case you get behind on development or something gets cut or what have you. But it was like this constant, like, instead of having like 3 mitigation approaches, like in my mind, it would be this crazy cycle and trying to come up with thousands of them. And so my mind never stopped. And then it was like the not sleeping, the not like, it was just endless in terms of just spiraling. At some point, I actually had a neighbor who approached me and was like, I think you have PTSD. And I'm like, why would you ever say that? No, like that's like people who go through very, very like traumatic and difficult things in life. Like, no. And so I did some research and I ended up finding this book about that specifically PTSD and toxic work situations.
Wow.
And I was the book. And then I reached out to a therapist and like to this day, I still have to give him the most credit because I am introverted. Like I will share things if they're asked in a particular way and I won't hold back, but yet I also have a barrier up. So there's an element of like, I'm still guarding and protecting myself in some way. And he saw through that all in our first session. And he was like, you were this way, you were that way. This is what you're thinking right now and everything. And so then I'm like, okay, you're my guy. We're going to get through it together. So months of therapy, and there was elements that were getting better, but then there was elements that weren't. So I started having like the main signs of it probably November, December of 2018. It was April of 2019 that I started seeing the therapist. October of 2019 was when I had my first panic attack. And that was very telling to me in that, okay, while some things are getting better, not everything is, and we got to do something different. So at that point, I reached out to both my therapist and my doctor, and I went on medication at that time, and I took a leave of absence. The initial leave of absence that my doctor wrote for me was for 3 months. So it would take me through to the end of the year. It was really interesting because during that time, I could just focus on me and what I needed to do for me. Everything was going great, but it was interesting as I was needing to think about returning to work in January. I also knew I wasn't ready. So I got another extension. And because we're in Canada, there's a particular program through the government. So I had money coming in from the government during this time, and you're allowed up to, I think it was 15 weeks, you could be away. So I exhausted the full 15 weeks and was getting ready to return to work. And I just had one request upon my return. And they said, no, that's not possible. And it wasn't like something that you needed to move mountains for. I just simply wanted to work in a different department. And they weren't willing to do that. And I just said, I'm not coming back then. And it was literally the first time in my life I made a decision where I put myself first. I don't know where I'd be today if I hadn't have done that. And then like a week later, maybe 2 weeks later, was when we had our first like set of shutdowns here because of COVID. So there was no more interviewing. There was no more like doing whatever. So it was just kind of like, okay, I'm just going to continue to focus on me. And it was through that one, my husband was like, you know what, why don't you just open your business? And I'm like, and I think for a month we went round and round because my husband is the most conservative person financially you'll ever meet. And while he owns his own business and stuff, his financials are up and down because they're very much influenced by the market as a whole. So I was like the constant money earner. Like my salary we could stand on and know that it was just there. So I was like, are you sure? Because it's going to mean like XYZ and 1, 2, 3 and alpha, beta, gamma and like all these things. And he was like, I'm sure. I'm like, okay. That's when like we started to put everything in place and at least do all the back end administrative governmental work to get things established. But I also learned through that if I hadn't have had that extra time, I don't think I would have been able to recover completely. But I had constant support from my husband, from my family, from my therapist, from my doctor. And I think that that's where it really like hit me hard, in that people are so alone in this world. Like, but we don't have to be, and we're not meant to live alone. We're meant to live as a community, as a society, and to just support one another where we can. It doesn't have to be big things by any means, but just knowing that we're living this life collectively in some way, shape, or form.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for your vulnerability. I know that someone is going to hear your story and really be touched by it and inspired by it. So thank you.
You're
Because
welcome.
not everybody's willing to share something that's so vulnerable. So thank you.
You're welcome. I think I realized that there's always a stigma about mental health, and there doesn't need to be. And I mean, I've always been a big advocate for mental health as a whole, but it wasn't until I went through this that I really realized, like, how fragile our mind is. Like, here I was thinking, yes, I'm being proactive and getting out of this situation before anything like really goes wrong. But it already had gone wrong. I just hadn't realized it yet.
Right.
And then I think just like knowing that there's so many people that are struggling. We're here, like there's people here to support, and you don't have to go through that alone.
So what are you working on right now that you're really excited about?
One of the things that's really impacted me a lot in the last couple of years is the notion of grief. My dad passed away in 2021. In some ways, it just feels like it happened yesterday. In other ways, it seems like it's been longer. About 10 years before he passed away was when he became like fully disabled. Leading up to things, it was one of those things where his kidneys were failing. This was March of 2021. And so, well, I got in my car with my dog and we drove down to Michigan. And I was going to be with my family for a week, visit with my dad and everything. And while I was there, he really, like, after a couple of days, he really like progressed, like 0 to 60 progression, like not in a positive way, but about a week after that, he passed away. I just know he's in a better place. Like, he's not in pain anymore. He's not struggling. He's able to run. He's able to do, like, I don't know what heaven is like, but I just envision him like running and doing all the things we used to do when I was a little kid. Our society doesn't give grief the place it needs to have. The notion of grieving has just really been on my heart. What I came to realize is that there's so many things that happen as well in our day-to-day lives that's not death. Not giving yourself a chance to grieve as you want for what you are letting go. I have a lot of crazy jumbled thoughts all in my head that I need to like figure out how they all fit together. But ultimately, like, I want to write a book.
I have a lot of thoughts running through my head right now based on what you just said. Way too much to unpack. We don't, well, honestly, as a society, we don't allow time for emotion, period. Grief being one of them. Do you have a story that you'd like to share, like where aromatherapy has just really blown your socks off?
I had a client diagnosed with depression probably 30 years ago, and just was really like at another phase in their journey where certain things were now a struggle again. Did a blend for that. But as we continued in our journey, what was really interesting to me is that while I'm not a therapist, while I can't diagnose and stuff, it was very evident, both in terms of just how they would express things, how they would go about their daily life, that a lot of their issues stemmed from this anger and bitterness that they were holding on to, of things that had happened in their past. So I had crafted a blend with the notion of like helping them to work through that anger and bitterness. So really a very like emotionally based blend of essential oils. It really was working. And so you could see where things were like starting to like come to the surface and like unroll themselves, but they kept trying to roll them back up and push them back in. I think the other thing is like I'm still like fascinated. I personally have had some digestive issues because of a medication I've been on recently. Taking a roller bottle of a digestive blend and just rubbing it on the abdomen, and how literally within seconds to a minute, like you feel better. And it's like, how can that be? Like, no, that can't be. Like, that was just a fluke. And then like you do it again, and it's like,
Yeah.
the third time it still worked. Okay, this works.
I have a good friend that, sometimes I'll be like, wow, that really worked. And she's like, are you surprised? I'm like, well, no, because I know it's going to, but yes, because it's like magic. I don't know. It's wild. I get it. So the mission of the podcast is to connect people with you. How can people find you, whether they're in Quebec or they're looking online? How do they know where to go?
My company name is Scented Path. So www.scentedpath.com. Also on Facebook, Instagram. Both of those are Scented Path _MTL.
Awesome. So as we close out, I'd just like to hand the floor back over to my guest. Anything else that you would like to share?
I would just say, like, never doubt what's going on in your life. Everyone's life journey is unique. Don't ever question, like, what's happening in the moment. And if you need somebody to talk to or to help with you to work things through, like, reach out. Like, there's so many of us that are, like, ready and willing and wanting to help you.
Beautiful. Tresa, thank you so much for coming on to the show.
Oh, thank you again for having me. It was just fun, and I enjoy spending time with you.
Thank you. Well, I just love it. Honestly, I love talking to people in all different stages of their journey. I really am just blown away by your business model.
I am really excited to see how I continue to grow out more my like business to business side of my model. Just again, so I can still like have that foot in the corporate world.
Beautiful. So if you're a business up in Montreal, connect with Scented Path. Get your people well, because well people work better.
Exactly.
I had a great time chatting with Tresa, and I hope you enjoyed the journey. Be sure to follow the Scented Path on the socials, and if you're in the Montreal area, you can schedule an in-person session. Lucky. Would you be open to leaving a review on Apple Podcast? I love reading your thoughts about the show. Doc Sal says, I smell a rock star. Melissa is an amazing interviewer, and I love learning about the pioneers and new aromatherapists. Thanks, Doc Sal. Every review you leave helps Aromatic Chat rise in the ratings, allowing new listeners to find the show and connect with their aromatherapist. Aromatic Chat is produced by Lemon Balm Coaching. I'm your host, Melissa, life and wellness coach for the broken, exhausted, hopeless, and overwhelmed. Overwhelmed. That pretty much sounds like everybody right now. I am a master transformational coach, registered aromatherapist, and certified body code practitioner. Look for the My Take episode in just a few weeks, where I will share some of the thoughts that were prompted by this show. I'll see you next time with our next episode. Until then, peace, love, and aromatics.